Malta and Gozo, and welcome to another episode of Lovin Daily. My name is Yannick Parch, and with me is Jean-Paul Azzopardi, and we're going to be running you through today's top stories. Before we start, just a reminder, if you haven't done so already, to subscribe to Lovin Digest. You'll get the day's news, a breakdown of the day's news sent directly to your inbox every day. So today's stories are hundreds of protesters took to the streets on Saturday to protest against COVID-19 restrictions. Prime Minister Robert Abela has warned that government will not hesitate from taking decisions in order to give value to the COVID-19 vaccine. A 3 million regeneration project in Marsalforn has received harsh criticism from some segments of the population. A motorcyclist has called out roadworks in Incline after he was involved in a horrific traffic accident. And a Maltese youth has finished an incredible 1,000-kilometer challenge in memory of his friend Rebecca Zammit-Lupi.
Absolutely. So our first story concerns the worldwide rally for freedom held across major cities in the world, including Valletta too, with people taking to the street in protest, chanting freedom and no vaccines, many of whom were not wearing masks and carrying placards bearing these messages of anti-vaccination, anti-government intervention into their lives, preaching freedom of choice as major countries around the world are now clamping down on those who aren't vaccinated and saying, listen, it's time you started getting vaccinated. Quite a big turnout over the weekend. I don't know if you saw some photos. And
a lot larger than I expected, to be honest. So far, it's been most of these protests has been just a handful of people. And I guess we all assume it will be the same. But I mean, ultimately, it does kind of speak to a reality that's true of all countries in Europe.
Absolutely, I understand where they're coming from. To some extent, this protest did go to some extremes, with people, comparing what we're going through with World War II, slavery, and even apartheid. Yeah. So there were some extreme placards, extreme signs, but no, it was quite a shockingly large turnout for the worldwide freedom protest. Like I said, it was held in major cities, including like New York and London as well. So people around the world are kind of those who aren't vaccinated, who don't want to get vaccinated, are really kind of stepping up and going against government measures.
I think the take-home message is also to kind of try and understand what causes these people to feel that way, and to hear them out. I mean, at the end of the day, yes, we can all sit and say, you should get vaccinated, but I think there is scope for at least understanding what causes someone to go down to the streets and protest against measures that ultimately are being implemented for everyone's own good.
Absolutely.
So on to our second story, which is quite related. Prime Minister Robert Abela has warned that government won't shy away from taking what he said were decisions in order to protect, or rather give value to the COVID-19 vaccine and to protect the population. The Prime Minister's remarks obviously came the day after the protest, and also following a number of stories which we at Lovin Malta have reported of employers requiring unvaccinated employees to get tested, or for example, a host of measures to even segregate vaccinated from unvaccinated people. Abela warned he warned that there was a small minority of people that were refusing to take the vaccine, and by doing so, preventing the country from being able to put its mind at ease when it comes to COVID. He insisted that while the government can't force anyone to take the vaccine, it wouldn't shy away from taking decisions. He obviously didn't specify what these decisions were, but it's clear that there is some concern that the take-up of the vaccine has maybe slowed down. I mean, to be fair, the country has managed to vaccinate, I think, 80% of the population, which is considerably comparatively high compared to other countries in the world. That being said, the government is clearly wants to get the number up even higher, and is willing to kind of
take more measure. I mean, this maybe helps understand why people were protesting over the weekend, when you see the government really is kind of trying to push people in this direction. But it's not just Malta that is kind of pushing for the vaccine. In fact, if you look at countries like France, Italy, and Israel, they're really pushing for people to get vaccinated. This morning, France just approved a bill that said, you need to have a COVID-19 vaccine pass to enter restaurants and use domestic travel such as planes and trains. And in fact, all healthcare workers in France now have to be vaccinated as well. It's mandatory. Italy have done something similar last week where you can't go into restaurants unless you have a COVID-19 vaccine pass. So Malta seems to be a bit behind in that front, but yeah, you can see that governments all around the world are pushing for this, and it seems to be the way forward. Moving on to a now controversial Masterplan project, which was unveiled last week. The 3 million project was meant to pedestrianize Masterplan waterfront, so families, children, and can play freely without fearing any accidents or any cars or transport coming through. However, it seems now that after a week of it being unveiled, residents are starting to see the cracks in the plan, and in fact have complained on a number of issues regarding this master plan. Primarily the issue that restaurants are now taking over this pedestrianized zone with tables out on the front, and people not really having much place to walk. In fact, people complaining that the only way they can enjoy the Masterplan waterfront is by sitting at a restaurant. You can't even sit on a bench. They're saying that the greenery and environment contributions are quite scarce as well, a lot of concrete, kind of not natural look to it. There was no breakwater, and they're also complaining about accessibility issues, especially to elderly people in the area. Basically, people complaining this isn't kind of the vision we had for this pedestrianized zone, and kind of questioning where all the money went, that whole 3 million went into this, and what the intentions really were for this. But it's not it's kind of the first project in the sense in Malta and Gozo to kind of make these areas pedestrianized, and it hasn't really turned out the way people were kind of expecting it.
Yeah, I mean, people's concerns ultimately need to be heard and listened to. I personally don't necessarily. As in, you'd have to see how the plans actually turn out, but I mean, people go out to eat as well. Having an outside space where people can go is in a sense. I mean, it's a positive that the road will not have cars passing through it. But obviously, as with all things, the projects can be done better. And unfortunately, given the way things are in Malta, you always wonder whether the price you've paid reflects actually what you've gotten, or whether there was some catch somewhere. Onto our next story. A motorcyclist has called out the authorities over the manner in which roadworks are undertaken in the country after he was involved in a horrific accident for which he blames works. Basically, this man was driving his motorcycle. He uploaded a post saying he was selling his motorcycle because Malta's roads were no longer safe, and he explained that he was driving through a road in Icklin. A car driving in front of him drove over a water culvert and brought it out of place. He had no time to react, ended up falling right into the culvert and very, very seriously injuring himself. In his post, he obviously said that, this is unacceptable, this is a result of the shoddy work, which he said ultimately is going to end up killing someone someday. His post was read by many people, went viral, and I suppose most of us can relate and to his frustration at seeing, for example, roads sometimes that take months, if not years, to complete, and then at the end of it, it still looks like it's not complete, or there's something sticking out and possibly endangering people. So hopefully, in his Facebook post, he called out Ian Borch, called out the authorities. Hopefully, they're paying attention, and we'll see fewer and fewer of these incidents going forward.
It's no surprise that Malta's roads aren't the safest in the world. I mean, potholes kind of plague every site you go by, and I mean, it's especially dangerous being a motorcyclist. We see these stories recurring all the time where motorcyclists are injured one way or another, whether it's a reckless driver or badly constructed roads, and it's a shame that we keep hearing about these stories. Lucky that he did survive, because in a lot of these circumstances, these motorcyclists, and there were photos uploaded online, he was seriously injured. But in a lot of these circumstances, most motorcyclists do lose their life, and it's a hobby that a lot of people like to practice here, and so it'd be nice to see our roads, not just for them, but for everyone that uses them, to be a lot more safer. Moving on to our last story, and more of a positive end to the show, a Maltese youth, Tommy Welbank, has finished his 1,000-kilometer challenge in tribute to Rebecca Zamit Lupi and in aid of Patinu Cares. Tommy Welbank decided to set off on this 1,000-kilometer running challenge 2.5 months ago. called the Run for Becca. He pledged to run 1 kilometer for every €5 donated to his cause. Basically, Rebecca Samit Lupi, as we all know, unfortunately passed away from a rare form of cancer earlier this year. And being her friend, Tommy wanted to pay respects to her and kind of pay tribute to her and ran this 1,000 kilometers. And over the weekend, he finally managed to complete it after 2.5 months of running. Incredible, just 15 years old. He did it surrounded by his friends and family, and he raised a total of €9,160 for Putin Who Cares in doing so. True inspiration from a young kid, especially, and for a great cause. Super proud and happy that he managed to see it through.
Congratulations, as you said, for such a young kid to have such determination and to pull off such a feat. Well done.
Truly incredible. And with that being said, this brings us to the end of today's episode. A reminder to sign up to Lovin Digest if you want all the latest news stories. And with that being said, have a day full of lovin'.